What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? A little midweek mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs. We've had reaction shows to Sunday Night Football, Chiefs-Lions. We had the doubleheader on Monday night. We had a mailbag yesterday, and I said, you know what? I got so many questions. Let's interact with the people, internet style. And that's through DMs on Instagram. So it's just my name. Fire in those DMs. Get your questions answered here on the show. A lot of content over the last all football season. So obviously subscribe to all our stuff, and you'll never miss anything. We will start with Tom here. I feel like I'm going insane. People keep saying Jordan Love makes poor decisions. Since week 10 of 2023, he has 56 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. As a 90s football guy who grew up watching Favre, don't you find that criticism laughable? INTs have been made famous by the internet. Who cares? Throw touchdowns and win games. While I agree, I mean, those numbers are better than, if you would have said what, I don't even know, it would have had to put in context, but I don't think I would have guessed his ratio is better than 13 or 3-1, right? Because what's 16 times 2 is 32 is 48. So he has a better interception and touchdown ratio since he really started playing well. I mean, I do think it's fair to start middle to late of that season. So you're cooking the books a little bit, but you could argue early on in 2023 when he wasn't playing well. If I remember correctly, it was before the bye, because I remember Gutekunst that year was like the bye must have been around like game 6 or 7, because he's like, he's got about 10 games left. We're going to have to make a tough decision this offseason. It's like, damn. But they were kind of right because of the contract situation, and they've won a lot of games with him. I think it's more, and I said this about Bo Nix and him. Obviously, he's more accomplished than Bo Nix. I mean, he's won a playoff game. It's the trust factor that the head coach, who also happens to be the play caller, has in the player. So I think it's more that. And listen, I'm a Jordan Love fan. I mean, he's my type player with the traits. But the difference of like Favre in the 90s, there was a little more wow and pizzazz behind his game. And maybe it's in defense of Jordan, what he's being asked and coached to do, it's kind of forced him to be a little robotic. But I do believe there is more, explosive playmaking in there. Because like you said, he is producing. And the teams, I don't want to say in a rut, but they definitely are. They have a lot more than is being shown now. We saw early in the season. I mean, when they're on, they're really, really good. But I'm still bullish on the Packers. Mailbag question. This is from Burke. Huge Ravens fan. Rough year. Do you think there is any shot we turn this around when Lamar and crew are healthier and make a second half run? Our schedule lightens up, but not sure if we have dug too big of a hole. And if you don't make the playoffs, is it time to part ways with John Harbaugh? Let's start with the latter part of that question, because I was thinking about this, and John Harbaugh will come up in this next question. I think if you're going to replace, and I said this last year about Tomlin, you know, when the Eagles fired Andy Reid, this is the only situation I've had intimate knowledge because I was there, and then I actually, once Chip came in a couple months later, I was gone, but I saw it. And they're like, we're going to fire Andy Reid. But who'd they go after? They went after Bill O'Brien, who was at Penn State and declined. He'd only been there a year. And they went after Chip Kelly. So, like, clearly, and I wasn't a part of the hiring process, but they had a specific or a couple specific individuals that they went, listen, if we're gonna fire one of the most successful, I think he probably is, I guess, Sirianni now because of the Super Bowl. Actually, 2 of them, but well, 1 win. You know what I mean? We better know who's replacing him. So it's like, I'm going to fire John Harbaugh because he had a crappy season because there was a bunch of injuries. Who am I replacing him with? Because I can't just fire John Harbaugh and go on a search. Like, I can't do that. Because the chances that, for every John Harbaugh, there's a lot of Aaron Glenn's. There's a lot of Jonathan Gannon's. There's a lot of this ain't working. And I think that complicates the situation because you look, this, I'm going to get into this topic probably over the next couple weeks. I think this is going to be one of the craziest off seasons in the history of football. When you look at college football, I mean, Penn State and Florida, and if they fired Norvell, Florida State, these are type jobs that give you $80 million contracts. Again, don't know if it's true. It was reported that Brian Callahan signed a 3-year, $15 million deal. James Franklin just fired. He's making 10. Kurt Signetti's at Indiana making 8. So I do think, Joe Brady, it's like, do you want the Arizona Cardinals job with no quarterback, or do you want to be the head coach at Florida? Here's a 6 years, $60 million, and you're the boss. Now, you can be like, well, college football, I don't know. It's not that bad. I'm watching these games on Saturday. It looks pretty badass, and they're getting paid premiums. So I think there's just a lot of moving parts, and I think you cannot fire John Harbaugh unless you go. This is where my Mike Tomlin thing was last year. It's like, hey, now's your time to take your swing on Ben Johnson. Like, you can just hire Ben Johnson. Now, it's also risky, but, no one would have faulted you for doing that. And Mike would have got a fresh start wherever, right? Hell, he'd probably be at the Jets, and they'd be winning. But I just don't think you can fire him willy-nilly and, let's go canvas the landscape. I don't think you can do that. I think you guys are in a little trouble. You'll definitely win some games if Lamar comes back healthy. But you start 4 games under. You have a stretch where you go 6-2. Let's just say you go 6-2 over your next 8 games at 1-5. Think about what your record is. 6 wins plus 1, 7. 2 plus 5 is 7. You only get back to 500. So it's really, really difficult. I'd be stunned given the way their defense is playing if they go on a 6-2 stretch. So if you went 5-3, you're still under 500 because you would be, what would that be? 5. If you went 5-3, you'd be 6-8. Getting texts about the guy that just cleared out my tree. My neighbor's tree fell. It honestly made me feel good about humanity. We had this, they call it microburst. I think it was a tornado. His tree fell over my fence, through my ficuses. Those ficus trees are tough. None of them snapped. Into my backyard. And I was like, I guess me and Maria, I'm like, I don't really know. I guess I just go over to his house. And it wasn't like my neighbor. It was behind me, so I had to go around the block. And I got in my car once the storm kind of really settled down and stopped raining. And he was pulling up to my house. And I was like, you know what? I just kind of put a smile on my face. But now, granted, he was older gentleman who I think is doing pretty well because he was teaching a class today. Said he had to go to Tucson to teach a commercial real estate class. He's wearing an Augusta National hat, so he must be I just kind of scouted him really briefly. I was like, oh, this guy might be pretty successful. But he was just a high-level guy. And it's just, I was like, I bet, knock on the door, guy's going to argue, it's not his fault, make me pay. And it wasn't like that at all. So it's like, why do I always assume the negative when there's just a lot of positivity out there? Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app has new promos every day. Obviously, we talk a lot of football here on 3 and Out. But the ALCS and the NLCS are currently going on. So you can bet on winners, pitchers, home run hitters, anything you want. Week 7 doesn't kick off till tomorrow, but if you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet, there is still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place $5 bet, and if it hits, you not only get your winnings, but you get an additional $150 in extra bonus bets. And since today is Wednesday, if you already are betting on the Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app, you know what that means. It's the last time to use your legendary reward drops. Open up the app today. You could have a bonus bet, or who knows what is in there. More drops every Thursday. The rewards and promos are nonstop. Question for the bag. Now that the Titans have fired their coach, what would it take for them to trade for someone like John Harbaugh that might need a fresh start? I would say that if you're the Titans, in what world would John Harbaugh be interested in that job? So to me, and this I said the same thing for Tomlin forever, they're not leaving the Ravens or the Steelers. You're going to have to fire them. Right? Sean Payton was like, this sucks, I quit. At the end of the day, they're the Saints. Right? When you work for the Steelers, when you work for the Ravens, when you work for the Eagles, you don't force a trade. That's not the way you make them fire you because the job, the infrastructure, the financial backing, it's all there. You don't leave. So I have a hard time seeing John Harbaugh get traded. I really do. I think he'd be more likely double middle fingers, fire me, and then I'll go get the job. Assuming that Borgonzi and Brinker, it is kind of a weird setup. I had a really close friend that almost joined up with them last year, and he was comfortable with the setup. He likes Borgonzi a lot. But I clicked on today at the gym, like that press conference from yesterday, and it's like the president, but who is a scout and has a scouting background and understands the cap over the GM. It's just kind of bizarre. So I actually have a buddy that works for the staff that has been some dysfunctional other places and said this place kind of crazy. And it's not like I'm defending what just went on with Brian Callahan. I've never met Brian Callahan, and he clearly wasn't good. I just don't think that John Harbaugh is like, yeah, I'll just go to the Titans, after working with Ozzie, Steve Bisciotti, and Eric DaCosta. So I think the other thing is Eric DaCosta and John Harbaugh are very, very close friends. Now there's a cold business, and business is cold in general. Your closest friends, I don't care who you are, things can change really quick when job stability, financial stability, and money is on the line. So I would never say never about a firing for sure, but I trade to the Titans. I can't see that. Like I don't see John Harbaugh unless he just wants to go to a retirement area, like being interested in like the Arizona Cardinals. Like he's gonna work for Michael Bidwell. I just I Here's the thing: what's make these guys so crazy is John Harbaugh has made so much money over the last decade plus. Like really, once he hit his stride, I mean, he's probably been making $10+ million for well over a decade. I think he makes like 15 to 18 million dollars now. John Harbaugh works like 80-hour weeks, so for over half the year, like he doesn't even have time to spend that money if he wanted to. And even if his wife is an aggressive spender, you can't blow that type of money, especially like once your house is paid off and stuff. Like, what are they really doing? Like he could take a deep breath, but that's not really how the Harbaughs are wired. Who's got it better than us? A lot of people beside the Ravens, that's for sure. What are your thoughts on the UTEP study suggesting that during the NFL playoffs, penalties against opposing defenses of the Chiefs were significantly more likely to result in first downs, cover more yardage, and fall into subjective categories like roughing the passer and pass interference? Got to say, it's frustrating to see Mahomes and Kelsey talk shit to other players, knowing they'll get the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they think like that. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I didn't see the study. Obviously, they've gotten some good breaks. I also think the talented get better breaks, right? I think the best always get the better breaks. It works like that in business. It definitely works like that in sports. Like Michael Jordan gets more calls than most players. So did Kobe Bryant. So does LeBron James. Warriors fans have been bitching for Steph forever. Doesn't think he gets enough calls. But Derek Jeter's going to get the benefit of the doubt on an outside pitch. Called a ball, not a strike. Kind of the way the world works. So it's like they've kind of earned that. It doesn't bother me, and I don't think they've won Super Bowls or gone to the Super Bowl because of the referees. Have there been individual situations that were BS? For sure. Do I think it's insane that Patrick Mahomes, when he goes out of bounds and then he cuts it back on a run and the guy stops? That shouldn't be allowed. That should be penalized. But yeah, I mean, I don't get caught up as much on the referees. Again, I mean, if I'm gambling on it, I'll freak out. But I just think we could. The referees have been bad, and officials in sports and umpires in baseball for the majority of my adult life. And if you just gonna go into a game wanting to uh, just hate those guys, you easily can, and it just can really bother you. Like there's a human element to sports, and these guys are their emotions get involved, whether it's Kelsey and Mahomes or whether it's the Warriors. I mean, the amount of times I have seen NBA players teed up for swearing. It's like, guys, this is not youth league pickup hoops here. This is a $1 billion industry with a lot of money on the line. We're not teaching life lessons here. We're trying to win chips and make cash. And that's always really bothered me. It's like, yeah, these are grown men. They're going to swear. Uh, Mailbag question. I'd be curious to hear how you think about growing your pod from a business standpoint. How closely do you monitor the numbers, engagement video to video, or even topic to topic? For example, Colin mentioned he's looking at how every segment performs on the herd. How much, if at all, does the team around you influence, suggest, inform your upload schedule, content topics, and strategy? Would you ever want to manage a network of your own like the volume? Or do you prefer just doing your own thing on camera? Uh, I would say two things that I closely monitor that I do on a daily basis is the content, what I'm going to talk about, which you're looking at the editor in chief here. So we have a text thread, we got things flying around, different ideas, different topics. And, I am not running a TV show here. So you're not going to hear the Dallas Cowboys leading my show 7, 8 months a year. That's just not going to happen. Now, luckily, because of the medium I'm in, I don't necessarily need to. I try to talk about things that I'm fired up on, but I also understand the business. I've been doing this for well over a decade in radio and podcast, especially now with the influence of YouTube. Like, I'm not going to lead 3 shows a week with the Jags, or the lead with the Titans. So I have a pretty good idea of what works and what doesn't. I mean, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. But then there are things that happen. Like I did I talked about Mark Sanchez, I think like a week ago, and we cut a social video, and it was massive. I mean, it was as big of a social video as we've ever done. And listen, I'm not that big. Like, I understand the value of social videos and social content, whether it's YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, Twitter little blasts. But that's not paying for my kid to go to private school. Like, it's not generating unless there's specific content we do for a sponsor. Like, it's not making any money. So, but like when you see big numbers, you're like, oh, people are into that. And we've been talking about that for a while. Is like, and I'm a big proponent of this. Is like, this show is not about the X's and O's of football. I'm not diving deep on the running strategy of the Arizona Cardinals, second down offense. I would go under. Like, that wouldn't work. We couldn't build a business off that. But I also like when things work and when they don't work. And I understand, like, why is Mark Sanchez story huge? Because it's a story that everyone's going to have an opinion on. My wife, my college roommate was texting me about it. He's a Mission Viejo guy and actually kind of knows Mark. But it's just like, it's just kind of a universal story. And I got to do a better job of incorporating, like when everyone, sometimes I push back of like, what is everyone talking about on social? Because I think that social media has been the downfall of a lot of people that I would say 15, 20 years ago that I would have viewed as successful people in the media. And I think it's rotted their brain. And they don't understand what's good and bad because they just live on the apps. And I try not to. As counterproductive as that may sound, given the business I'm in, I'm adamant, and I've become so numb to it. I'm pretty good at separating. Like, yeah, that doesn't even matter. But I do think it's pretty clear when topics are pretty hot, and there's a human element to that people enjoy, and people enjoy my opinion on it. So it's like I can talk about Patrick Mahomes' performance, or a Max Crosby trade. He didn't get traded. I'm just using hypothetical. He probably should, but like throwing blue in the. I can do that with my eyes closed. Like that's my bread and butter. But I'm also a normal human being that just does normal shit and has normal conversations about normal things. And I got to do a better job about incorporating that type stuff. And then obviously, the lifeblood of what I do. Like, you hear a college coach, what's the lifeblood of what you do? He's like, recruiting. Well, it's my partners, the advertisers. So I'm very, very involved in that with our sales team, with our group, and I take it very, very seriously. So I would say the lifeblood of me is the content I'm going to talk about it on a weekly, and obviously during season, it's a lot of game reaction, and it's Ray Lewis Monday through Friday. You pay me Monday through Saturday. Sundays are for free. Like, you kind of pay me for the 6 months that aren't the NFL season. The season is just a reactionary. If you can't do good stuff in the middle of October, I might as well just close up shop. But I would say content and ads are my bread and butter. When it comes to numbers, like, I don't spend too much time. I obviously look and am dialed in, but I'm not overly aggressive with that type stuff. Colin does a television show. So, like, segments on television that get people to stay around. It's a little different than this, I would say. That's why when me and him do a podcast, we'll just talk about whatever like going on in the NFL. There's no rhyme or reason. There were games that we wouldn't hit in if we were doing a television show. That on podcast it doesn't matter as long as it's interesting. And I would say my one philosophy is that I just try to talk about things that I'm interested in. I don't fake anything. Like I'm not doing some of these TV shows where I have to pretend to care. If I don't care, I won't talk about it. I mean, it's a pretty easy formula for me. And as I've gotten older, I just realized there are things I just don't care about on a given day. Like I'm just not going to talk about it because I truly don't care. But if I get enough people ask me about it, I'm like, okay, I didn't care that much about Jonathan Gannon slapping DeMarcado. But then that's a good, a good example of a lot of people are talking about it. People are asking me about it. I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. You got to be very careful. I made a mistake. I've had these bad allergies. I had a sinus infection probably like 4 months ago. I had a bunch of like stuff in my ear. Flu. I had to go to the doctor like a week ago because I was like, God, when I try to fall asleep, I feel like I'm in the ocean. Bunch of stuff in my ear. She said start taking this prednisone, a little steroid. Kind of makes you like edgy and grouchy, which I don't really mind. But you got to be careful. You got a pregnant wife. Emotions are running high in my house. But also popping some allergy medicine. I just do first thing in the morning. I just take a couple whatever my pills that I need to take for that day. My prednisone, my allergy, and then you realize it's kind of not non-drowsy, but it's not drowsy. It's like I feel a little like I need a little more energy. Uh, and right now I'm pretty dialed in on just at this point in time at 40 years old, uh, just operating my deal, and then figure it out maybe in the future, have other aspirations, but just kind of build off this, which is three and out and go low and expand the content that we have going. Okay, real talk. Ever have one of those need it right now moments? Like the dog just chewed through the leash, kid's project needs glitter glue tonight, and somehow the toilet paper is gone again? Yeah, that moment has happened to everyone. That's where Walmart Express Delivery comes in clutch. Get all that stuff pet stuff, school stuff, household stuff, all the stuff in as fast as 1 hour. 1 hour. That means chargers, diapers, candles, light bulbs, laundry detergent, real life rescue items. And it's all from Walmart. Just hop on the app, order what's needed, and boom. It's at the door before a toddler melts down or before halftime is even over. Yes, game day food can be delivered in an hour too. Try Express now and get free delivery on a first order with promo code EXPRESS. That's free delivery on a first order with promo code EXPRESS. Walmart Express Delivery in as fast as 1 hour. Unheard of. Until now, that is. Promotion valid for first express delivery order, $50 minimum, subject to availability. Restrictions apply. Regarding your Titans rant on Monday, I felt a bit compelled to respond on behalf of the fan base. Firing Variable was a polarizing decision, but one that I had that made some football sense. Will Levis had shown some legit flashes in 23. And Vrabel had gone 6-18 in his last 24 with low-skill buddies commanding a pitiful offense. Back then, it truly did feel like change was needed. Callahan was certainly not an improvement, and I look forward to the team getting the next hire right. But I can't be too bitter about wanting to pivot to a younger offensive mind. All that said, who do you see as the right fit? But this is the thing with a bad organization. Like John Harbaugh has gone through bad times. Mike Tomlin, I know they technically never had a losing records, but clearly he's had some teams that weren't that good, right? And when you know you have something good, you go, we're going to stand by you. And yeah, force Mike Vrabel to fire his coach. Now, I don't know, I have all the behind the scenes information. If he goes, I'm not firing him, you go, yeah, okay, we're going to have issues. But the big reason everyone reported that they fired him is like he wasn't super happy all the time and inclusive. And like you said, he was losing. It's a production based business, but you're not doing better than that. Like, look at the other guys that he replaced. Mike Mularkey. Like, look at some of the coaches in over the past decade that you've had run your franchise. They're an embarrassment. And yeah, Mike hit a rough skid, and he had to go with Will Levis. I mean, who loved Will Levis? Rand Carthen. Will Levis stinks. But I hear you. I mean, it's not as black and white maybe as I made it out to be. But it's pretty clear, even when it happened, that, and I think a lot of us that aren't too close to the sun went, that seems a little crazy to me. You're going to fire him for Brian Callahan, who wasn't even calling plays. That's what that was my point. You hired him. This is the Mike McDaniel's thing. Is he's not the play caller. So at least when you're getting a play caller and you hire him as your head coach, like Liam Cohen, he's going to call the plays because you've seen him call the plays. Like, we didn't know if Mike or Zach Taylor could call the plays. With UCLA winning back-to-back games, is it more of an indictment on how bad Deshaun Foster was, or is it just the team playing well for the interim? If you Google Tim Skipper, who I worked with at Fresno State for 2 years, Tim Skipper is one of the best coaches I've ever been around. His command of the players is elite. Now, not shocking, his dad, decades in the NFL as a coach. His brother, decades in the NFL as a coach. His brother is currently the running back coach for the Buffalo Bills. James Cook, you ever heard of him? Doing pretty well. And those guys have been around football their entire life. Tim Skipper was a star middle linebacker at Fresno State. His brother was a star running back at Fresno State. Those guys are football men. And when you're just a player and then you kind of get into coaching and all of a sudden you're the head coach, Tim Skipper has been an assistant coach from everywhere from Sac State to Fresno State to the University of Florida. He's seen it all. NFL players from the first round to the seventh round, coordinators that are now in the NFL, in college football, head coaches. I mean, he played with Lane Kiffin, worked for Pat Hill, worked for Jim McElwain, worked for Jeff Tedford. So his experience level, and then last year because Jeff Tedford quit in the summer, he got to be the head coach for a year on a staff that he didn't hire any of them, and he just had to run it. And at one point in time, I think they were like 6-3, or maybe they were 5-3. They had some injuries, and they finished 500. But it's hard to win at Fresno State. He's getting his players poached. Tim Skipper has a lot more experience. Like, he's seen how to operate 10 different type team meetings. Good teams, bad teams, in the middle teams, teams that need a boost, knows how to run a practice. So the experience in Deshaun Foster is like, I think Deshaun said this, like he's like a third or fourth Skipper brother, because his dad, Tim Skipper's dad, or maybe it was Skipper's brother, coached him at UCLA. I forget. It might have been his brother, but he knows the family really well. Like, Tim is very tight with Deshaun Foster. But in terms of who can coach better, like it's not even fair. There's no way he could know how to do everything as well as Tim Skipper. It's literally impossible. Doesn't mean if he had been an assistant for 10 more years, couldn't have figured it out and but right now in 2025, it's not a fair fight. So I think there's an experience level in coaching football that can't be duplicated. It really can't. Some guys, like Vrabel's a good example. Vrabel played for a long time in the NFL. And the way he played in the NFL was a lot like a coach, right? He was working hand in hand with Belichick, from Romeo Crennel to some of those guys. So his teaching as a player, so by the time he gets into coaching in his late 30s, early 40s, he had a unique background that way. And he started at the bottom. He just went right to Ohio State, started working in the gutter, and kind of worked his way up. Position coach, defensive coordinator. Like, it took a little while. Deshaun Foster, went from first base to home plate pretty quick and clearly was over his head. Do you think the Falcons are slowing Penix's growth by running almost their entire offense out of the pistol? I like it as part of the offense, but they use it the entire game. It came up Monday night during the broadcast when Orlovsky said they are mainly doing it because Bijan feels like he gets a lot better vision. Thoughts? Well, Bijan's a better player. So if Bijan goes, coach, I like being in the shot, or I like being in the pistol because it allows me to see more. Penix ain't Peyton. So if Penix goes, well, hey, coach, I'd rather do this than that, you're going with Bijan Robinson. And he busts 80-yard runs, he's going to get the benefit of the doubt. At the end of the day, production-based business, and the guy's produced at the highest level who happens to be your best player, you kind of got to figure it out around him. Now, over time, I think you work with them both, but I have a hard time arguing if Bijan says I have better vision on those plays, not doing those plays. Because he's so good, it's like, okay, a run's coming. Stop me. You probably won't.